Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this allowable ex parte. I'll ask Mr. Melchers to read the docket, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. We are here pursuant to a notice of request for allowable ex parte briefing that was filed on behalf of AARP. It's scheduled for today, February 20th, 2019, at 10 a.m. here in the Commission's hearing room. And the subject matter to be discussed at the briefing today is relating to docket number 2018-319E, effects of proposed rate adjustment on consumers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Melchers. Ms. Pittman, it looks like you're up for ORS.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. My name is Jenny Pittman. I'm a staff attorney for the Office of Regulatory Staff, and I am here today as the designee of the Executive Director of the ORS at this allowable ex parte. As the ORS representative, it is my duty to certify the record of this proceeding to the Chief Clerk of the PSC within the next 72 hours and verify that this briefing was conducted in compliance with the provisions of SC Code Section 58.3.260C. The requirements of that statute are, in part, that the allowable ex parte be confined to the subject matter which has been noticed. In this case, the issue noticed was effects of proposed rate adjustment on consumers in docket number 2018-319E, application of Duke Energy Carolinas, LLC, for adjustments in electric rate schedules and tariffs and request for an accounting order. I therefore ask that the presenters, commissioners, and staff all please refrain from discussing any matters not related to this specific topic. Secondly, the statute prohibits any participants, commissioners, or commission staff from requesting or giving any commitment, predetermination, or prediction regarding any action by any commissioner as to any ultimate or penultimate issue which either is or is likely to come before the commission. Third, I would ask that the participants, commissioners, and staff refrain from referencing any reports, articles, statutes, or documents of any kind that are not included in today's presentation. A copy of any document which is referenced during the briefing must be provided to me for inclusion in the record, which I will certify to Ms. Boyd. And finally, everyone in attendance today must sign in and must also read, sign, and return the form which you were given at the door when you came in today. This form must be signed by each attendee to certify that the requirements contained in Section 58.3.260C have been complied with at this presentation. I thank you all for your time and attention. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. We'll turn it over to AARP. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Adam Prothero. I'm here on behalf of AARP with Dr. John Roof. Dr. Roof has prepared a briefing for the Commission on the subject we discussed earlier regarding the effects of proposed rate adjustments in these dockets. Of course, nothing in this briefing should be seen as a recommendation or a request for any action on the part of the Commission. We believe this information is critically important to the Commission's ultimate decision. With that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Roof.
Dr. Roof, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Commission, we want to thank you for holding this briefing. I appear today on behalf of AARP and our 625,000 members, 50-plus citizens and residents of South Carolina. My name is John Roof. I live in Columbia. I am an AARP volunteer at both the state and national levels. In my day job, I'm the principal of the Roof Group, which is a research and policy analysis firm. I earned a PhD in history at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, preceded by a master's in history at Illinois, and a bachelor's in history at Seattle University. For 40 years, I have engaged in policy analysis and advocacy on energy and utility issues in South Carolina, including participating as a pro se intervener in rate proceedings before the Commission from 1979 through 2005, testifying before the Commission on issues affecting low-income consumers, and representing consumer interest before the South Carolina General Assembly from 1987 to 2011 for South Carolina Fair Share, a statewide public interest organization. A substantial proportion of that work was related to regulatory policy for electric, gas, and telecommunications utilities. I continue to engage in legislative and stakeholder processes on behalf of AARP and the Appellate Legal Justice Center. I have testified in state and federal courts as an expert on, among other matters, statistics, demography, socioeconomic characteristics of populations, and household economics. My presentation today regards the impact of the proposed rate increase in the docket on consumers. My special focus will be on low-income consumers and senior consumers, especially low-income elderly, and the disproportionate effect that Duke Energy Carolina's proposed rate increase will have on low-use and low-income consumers. The deck I think I just cut myself off. Okay. The deck service territory includes portions of 18 counties in the upstate. And as you can tell from and as you know from the map on the right, because we also have lots of co-ops and munis in the upstate, that territory is somewhat of a speckled beast. That creates some problems for doing statistical analysis of what's going on in the deck service territory. So what I have done is for most of the demographic data, I have relied upon the best data available, which is the U.S. Census Bureau's public use microdata subset of the American Community Survey for the 2013 to 2017 period. That data does not allow you to hone in ways that would let me precisely match it to the Duke territory, but as I frequently say, God does not make perfect data. And so you do the best you can with what is available. So the statistics I give you are from the PUMAs in that lower map. A PUMA is a public use micro area. This data simply does not allow you to hone in further. These are the PUMAs that most closely represent the Duke service territory. It does not perfectly represent it. Among the population in that area, 16% of the population are age 65 and above. Another 20% are 50 to 64. So 36% of the population in that area would be eligible to be AARP members. 75% of the 18-plus population in the DEC service territory are white alone, 20% are Black or African American alone, and 5% are Latino. Among households reporting that they are owners or renters, 27% are renters, and 3% live without payment of rent. %18 of the households live below the federal poverty level. 35% of those households live below 200% of the federal poverty level. The poverty level is presented as an approximation on sort of a minimal living standard. I think most folks who study these issues would tell you that in reality, to have something even approaching a reasonable economic status, you would need to be below 200% of the federal poverty level. And more than one third of the population in the debt service territory lives below that 200%. Those are the current federal poverty guidelines, which I know for myself, I look at and I'm old, so when I look at those numbers, I think back to numbers in my youth, and they look like, well, that's not a bad living. But the reality is that because of inflation over the years, it's gone up quite a bit since I had my first job at $1.15 an hour. Those numbers really represent just a bare living, and yet substantial proportion of the population in this district in this area lives below that. In the 18 counties served by DEC, on an average month from July 18 through January 2019, 120,205 households receive SNAP benefits. That's what we used to call food stamps, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. In October of 2018, the average monthly household benefit in South Carolina was $268.40. For an individual, the average monthly benefit was $124.95, or $4.03 per day. I don't know how many of you do the shopping in your household. I do it in mine, and I can't even imagine trying to shop for my wife and I on $8.06 a day. But that is what, when it's suggested folks have all of these benefits, that's the kind of typical benefits low-income folks would have. And SNAP benefits basically, for most folks, eligibility goes to 130% of the federal poverty level. Duke Energy, persons in the DEC territory age 62 and above included 268,000 folks who receive Social Security benefits. The average monthly benefit is $1,204. And the percent of recipients for whom Social Security is their entire income is 38%. So almost 2 in 5 Social Security recipients in the upstate, that is their total income. And for those who have no other income, their Social Security check averages $1,059. Again, I can't imagine trying to live on $1,059, but that's what a substantial proportion of our Social Security recipients in the upstate do. The average rent in the DEC area was $829 per month. That includes better off and lower income folks, although lower income folks are much more likely to be renters. If you look at rental housing costs, which are defined as rent plus utilities, and that's all utilities as a percent of household income in those 18 counties, it ranged from 28.1% in McCormick to 49.7% in Greenwood County, compared to the standard of 30%. If you happen to live in public housing, of which there's practically none left in the state, but much of the subsidized housing in the state, the target is that your rent plus utilities would be at 30% of your income. And clearly, for a large number of low-income folk. In those counties, the rent plus utilities already exceed that 30% target. Economic fragility, one way to represent that is the number of evictions that happen, folks who cannot meet their obligations of paying rent. In 14 of the 18 relevant counties, the eviction lab at Princeton found more than 250,000 eviction filings and 69,637 evictions in 2016. That happens not to include Greenville County, one of the largest, where they did not have data for that year. In most covered counties, eviction rates have substantially increased over the last several years. So folk are already hurting, and evictions are substantially going up. Transportation is critical to living, whether you own a car or you access public transportation. Without it, you have limited access to employment, health care, or a social life. In general, our cities have better public transportation than small towns and rural areas, which effectively have none. But even those fail to provide adequate coverage for zero-vehicle households. A 2011 study ranked Greenville as the worst in the country in terms of folks having access to public transportation if they did not have a vehicle in their homes. The Greenville-Malden Easley metropolitan area provided only 28% of working adults with access to transit. DEC has proposed a significant rate increase request in this docket. They're seeking to raise electric rates for their typical residential customer, the 1,000 kilowatt hour customer that we always hear referenced, even though, frankly, that is slightly below the average customer, by 14%. A large component of that is increasing the basic facilities charge from $8.35 monthly to $28.89 per month, a 246% increase. Overall, DEC seeks to increase revenues for residential customers by 12.1%. Regardless of rate design questions, an overall 12.1% rate increase request will have a significant impact on all customers. Lower income, lower use customers will face added economic pressure to an already tough life. The DEC proposal substantially increases the effective per kilowatt hour for lower use customers. The less you use in a month, the more substantial is that increase to the per kilowatt hour effective price. Not the volumetric rate, which goes down, but the effective price of buying the electricity when you combine the basic facilities charge with the volumetric price. But at the upper end, the effective per kilowatt price actually goes down, combining those two. This is for the RS rate. Other residential rate schedules, particularly for the RE rate, which is the other large one for DEC in South Carolina, they show the same shape because of the substantial increase in the basic facilities charge. Low usage customers who would most certainly be hurt by the radical rate shift to fixed charges include a majority of low income households, a majority of households with somebody who is 65 or older, most apartment dwellers, and customers who consume energy more effectively than the average person. Utilities, including Duke Energy, have long argued that low-income customers are, because of poor housing stock, inadequate energy efficiency programs, improvements, inefficient heating and cooling equipment, and inefficient appliances, high-use customers. But they never produce data to support this position. No doubt, for some lower use customers, if you live in a trailer, an old trailer that uses old strip heating, you're going to use comparatively a high amount of electricity. But those can be addressed through solutions such as weatherization and other programs. There was no way for the majority of low-income customers, who are low-use customers, to mitigate a large basic facilities charge. Electric consumption rises with income. And the numbers I give you in this section are from the REX data produced by the Energy Information Administration. The most recent survey data is from 2015. It was released in 2018. Because of the sample size, this data does not hone in even at the state level, but the numbers I'm giving you are for the South Atlantic Division, Census Division, which is basically from Delaware to Florida and some of the island territories of the United States, like the Virgin Islands. Again, this is the best data available to address these issues. And what they show is that annual kilowatt hour energy consumption goes up by income. On average, lower income consumers are not high users. They are lower users. Customers with 2015 household incomes up to $20,000 used only 10,219 kilowatt hours in the previous year, or 900 kilowatt hours per month. That's lower than both the nominal typical customer and the average customer in the DEC territory, who uses about 1,100. That compares to nearly twice the consumption, 19,971 kilowatt hours annually, and 1,660 kilowatt hours monthly for those making over $140,000. I produced this scatter plot by income to show that even though there are some higher use low-income customers, the bulk of the lower income customers are lower use customers. The size of those dots is based on weighting the survey data. So that shows you how many folk at that level were using that amount of electricity for that income level. Low-income customers have a high energy burden. That is not because they are spending so much money on electricity and using so much electricity, but because they don't have much money. If you, as a portion of their income, the light bills that lower income users receive monthly are just a large portion of their income. And that's showed by this chart. Low-income people simply reduce electricity consumption. They have fewer of the fancy appliances, even if theirs may be inefficient. They don't have as much of the electronics. They keep their houses cooler. They keep their house or hotter, depending on the season. They keep their houses darker because that's a necessity. Renters are lower use customers. In this area, the 850 kilowatt hours per month for renters compares to 1,257 kilowatt hours per month for homeowners. For seniors, the evidence is not quite overwhelming that seniors are lower income, are lower use customers. But if you look particularly at the lower income groups, you will see that lower income seniors are low use customers. And generally, seniors use less electricity than younger folk do. So what do you do if your bill goes up and you have limited or fixed income? Sometimes, of course, you live without electricity, and I didn't even list that on here because you get cut off. You can't pay the bill, you get cut off. You can't pay the cutoff fees. You can't find the money to pay that bill, and you just simply go without. I don't have numbers on that for the Duke territory. They may be buried in the application, but I did not see them. More typically, what you do is you reduce use. As I've explained, that means you live in a colder or hotter life in a darker home. Already 16% of lowest income customers don't have air conditioning in this area. That's one of the reasons every summer we see the calls for fans so that lower income folk, and especially older lower income folk, have some kind of relief from life-threatening heat that we suffer in South Carolina. You shuffle things around. You cut back on needed health care expenditures for both care and medicine. Particularly low, as you get older, one of the things that happens is you spend a lot, you get sicker, your body breaks down, and you spend a lot more time in doctor's offices. I have 2 doctor's appointments this week, and I get around. And the number of medicines you take increases, so paying for those becomes more and more of a challenge. And what happens when you are pressed financially is that you cut back on those things. Even though that undermines your overall health, it undermines your quality of life. It reduces your life expectancy. I know some of my low-income advocacy colleagues would come in here and tell you, people will die. Well, it's not like they're going to fall over dead, but their health deteriorates when they have additional stresses. And particularly for low-income seniors, they're already pretty stressed. They reduce already limited food intake or convert from healthy eating to calorie eating. We oftentimes hear stories of folks judging people in the grocery store because they are frankly buying crap. But the truth of the matter is that healthy food is much more expensive and oftentimes provides fewer calories. At some point, you've got to have calories to live. So what people buy is stuff that provides calories. And so when you are more economically stressed, your eating goes down. It goes down in quantities. It goes down in the healthiness of the food that you're eating. For a couple 51 to 70, a thrifty food plan requires $365 per month, while a moderate plan costs $588.50 per month. Those are USDA estimates of what it costs to have even a moderate food plan. That's not eating filet mignon. It is eating somewhat healthy. If you're living on $1,000, I think it was $54 as a Social Security recipient with no other income, and maybe you receive food stamps at $4.03 a day per person, you're pretty stressed to eat in any reasonable way. And raising rates obviously provides additional stress. You delay purchase or maintenance of a car, threatening your ability to work. You may lose your home to bankruptcy or eviction. It's easy to say, well, it's just X amount of dollars more. But when you're living at the margin, it does not take what is already an economic house of cards to come tumbling down. You're at a tipping point, and just a little bit more pushes you over that edge to where you just can't make it anymore. Now, borrowing money to pay your light bill is not wise economic policy. Most of us would not recommend it. No economist would recommend it. But the simple reality is that a lot of folk, when they're shuffling, trying to move things around, trying to barely eke through, not paying Peter so that you can pay Paul, and not paying Paul the next month so that you can pay Peter. When you're in that circumstance, far too many South Carolinians seek to borrow that money. And the available resources, if you're low income, you can't just walk into a bank and borrow money if you're low income. It simply is not available to you. So where do? You go to a payday lender. In South Carolina, a payday lender will make you a loan of up to $550 at 391% interest. We do limit the number of times you can do what's called flipping the loan, which is essentially borrowing money to pay back the money you borrowed 2 weeks ago. You would have a 140% of what you borrowed when you run out of that. I think it's 7. I'm trying to remember the number. I think it's 7 times you can borrow that. In a year, you'd have paid 140% of what you initially borrowed because you couldn't afford not to have that $550, $400. You could go to a title lender and pay basically 150% to 300% APR. Or you could go to a pawnbroker, risking your collateral for a loan of $100 to $1,000 and pay somewhere between 141% and 270% APR. Those are the sorts of things folks do when the house of cards start coming down, and they're shuffling and scuffling, trying to find ways to just make it. A high basic facilities charge undermines energy efficiency and removes your ability to control your bills. That's true for all customers. It particularly hits on lower income, lower use customers because it reduces the incentive to reduce usage. Every additional kilowatt hour I buy costs less than the last one I bought. Any economist will tell you that with a declining marginal cost, that encourages you towards buying electricity rather than doing energy efficiency improvements on your home. More demand also pushes the need to build new plant and transmission and distribution facilities that drives up costs for all electric consumers. For lower income and fixed income customers, energy efficiency investments are already a budgetary challenge. But a high fixed charge makes it much harder to afford even smaller dollar efficiencies like caulking and replacing less efficient light bulbs. Tripling the fixed charge to $28.89, almost $350 per year, takes housing repairs, duct improvements, and insulation off the table. And we have programs. And, there are several of them. But they're inadequate. They are limited and inadequate. Our Office of Economic Opportunity for fiscal year 2016 allocated $2 million to the Weatherization Assistance Fund and $4.4 million to the LIHEAP Weatherization Assistance Funding. And they helped a total of 509 individuals and families statewide, including 212 elderly and 132 disabled individuals. I had a colloquy in a public meeting with the director of the Office of Economic Opportunity, and I asked him, do y'all do a needs assessment? And he essentially said, there's no point, because we're never going to meet it. To be able to do 509 individuals and families in a year just pales compared to the number of low-income folks living in inadequate housing that we have in South Carolina. LIHEAP is a CAP block grant program, a federal program. The funding only serves a small percentage of the population eligible to receive the benefits it provides. South Carolina received a net total of $38.9 million in 2014, with which 54,000 households were provided energy assistance. Those funds are so scarce that the community action agencies which distribute them, for the most part, don't even advertise them because they're gone before anybody who read the advertisement would show up. In addition to the federal programs, there are other programs. I happen to serve on the board of something called the Senior Weatherization Fund, which is, essentially an endowment set up by the monies left over when there was a portrait fund at the General Assembly for former Lieutenant Governor Glenn McConnell. And, we do what we can do, but, we make an allocation of $25,000 every 6 months or so to one nonprofit, sometimes another, sometimes two nonprofits that do weatherization for seniors. And the IOUs have their programs. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And they're currently and will soon do more community solar programs, which are probably, to my mind, the only reasonable way that you can get solar energy and to low-income customers and save them money. But The expected savings of $62 per month for DEX community solar low to moderate income customers would be cut by a third by the proposed fixed charge increase. And there's no doubt that DEC invests in energy efficiency programs. And they have a number of those programs, weatherization programs, their new community solar programs with low income features in it. But the question is, how many homes do they actually weatherize? And what proportion of the need does that meet? When we hear actual numbers, they are small relative to the huge inventory of poor housing stock that confronts the DEC territory. Manufactured homes, housing like mill villages that was not built for energy efficiency, and housing that is run down. Those weatherization and energy efficiency resources are woefully inadequate to meet the need. They may be the gold standards for how you help low-income customers by improving weatherization, energy efficiency in the home, but the resources available just don't meet the need. Much of our housing stock, such as older mobile homes not built for energy efficiency and heating with electric strip heatings that I talked about, costs more to weatherize and make energy efficient than the returns in lower electricity costs, are difficult to achieve. It's my understanding that it costs you twice as much to weatherize a trailer, manufactured housing, I guess they expect us to call them, than it does a stick-built home. We support those programs, but also recognize for most low-income consumers, including low-income older persons, they simply are not available to mitigate the effects of increasing light bills. Now, we have a Lifeline program in South Carolina for our telephone customers, low-income telephone customers. But we don't have any such kind of a financial support program for low-income electric customers. During the Act 236 2.0 stakeholders discussions that were organized by the Office on Energy at ORS, stakeholders discussions included a low to moderate income solutions subcommittee, of which I served. I don't want DEC coming in later and say, well, he didn't tell us he was part of this, which would provide a bill credit of $50 per month for SNAP recipients, funded by per kilowatt hour, I guess I say there, megawatt hour, it's all the same, charge of about $2 on all electric customers, regardless of class. That would be, the $2 would be on residential customers. The subcommittee noted that if low-income electric consumers were not given some relief, we did not have a true state energy plan, but an energy plan for those South Carolina citizens who can afford it. The DEC service territory includes substantial numbers of low-income and fixed-income consumers for whom a substantial increase in their bills will have serious negative effects. The particular rate design proposed in docket 2018-319E, with its tripling of the basic facility charge, will fall particularly on low-use customers, including a majority of low-income households, a majority of households with someone who is 65 or older, most apartment dwellers, and customers who conserve energy more efficiently than the average person. Resources to mitigate those effects through bill paying assistance, weatherization, and energy efficiency improvements are simply inadequate to the need. Dumping costs onto the fixed charge robs consumers of the full benefit of their energy conservation efforts and denies them the full value of those efforts. Large fixed charges take away customer control over their energy bills. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Roof. Questions, commissioners? Anybody have a question for Dr. Roof? Commissioner Howard.
In your numbers, let's say the 600,000. How many of those are AARP members, or what is your membership in the state?
625,000.
Those are just your members.
Just our members, yes.
Thank you.
Other questions? Any others? Commissioner Whitfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Roof, for this presentation. Hadn't seen you in a long time, I think, since your days in Fairfield, but
yes.
Good to have you with us. And you provided a lot of statistical and demographic data, and I don't think there's probably a slide of an area maybe that you didn't cover. There is one area I'd like to maybe ask you about just a little bit. You cited some numbers, everything from the 200% below the poverty level and cost of what the increase in the basic facilities charge might do. Do you have any numbers when you talk about these costs? Do you have any numbers for people over 65 that are, or maybe we could go below that, that are AAR, that are fit your membership of AARP, that what their percentage of their power bill is and or would be of their total income? And I know you provided several different subsets, the under 200% but do you have any numbers of percentages? In other words, what are the other bills that are really outside of utility bills that are in percentage terms, if you can, hardships or large portions of their income?
Well, I think I gave you the numbers for low-income folk below age 65 and 50 to 64. And our membership, as I'm sure any of you who have passed age 50 and had your male person cursing at you because of the delivery of all the solicitations from AARP.
I'm getting those.
So those numbers are included in one of the slides, the proportions of how many of our eligible folk, and unfortunately not all eligible folk join, but the proportion of eligible folk from 50 and above, 16% are age 65 and above. 50 to 64 are aged 50 to 64. So 36% combined are in that age range. And I did not break it out otherwise. One of the things I think it's important to recognize about AARP is we don't just advocate for seniors. We have, at the core of our values is intergenerational equity. So while we would like you to take care of old folk, we'd also like you to take care of all low-income people. Hopefully they'll live to be AARP members one day.
Do you happen to have any numbers, though, of what percentage or what portion of their income goes to their utility bill and other necessary expenses? monthly
If
expenses.
if you are a low-income older person, it's 100% goes to necessities.
Right.
I mean, it's because there's not much. Since for the most part that income is inadequate to support a really good lifestyle, it's also inadequate to support anything beyond scuffling month to month.
I understand. I guess what I'm asking you, what you have any numbers? What percentage goes to utilities? What goes to food? What goes to medicine?
No, I don't have that broken
All right.
out.
Okay. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other? Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir, for your testimony here today. I'm curious how Duke's current basic facility charge compares to other similarly situated IOUs and their proposed basic facility charge. How would that compare to similar situated investor-owned utilities?
I think its current charge is in line with basic facilities charges around the country. While some commissions have allowed increases in basic facilities charges, I don't think any has allowed an increase to this level. I haven't done a specific study of that, but that is my understanding from reading in the area. Some commissions have allowed some increases. You know, when I look at my, whatever we're calling SCE and G today, when I look at my bill, it's a $10 per month charge. The North Carolina Commission recently turned down a charge in this range of what they are proposing and reduced it to, I think, $14 and change.
So do you think the current charge is reasonable?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Commissioner Irvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I was trying to make some notes as we went along, and I may have just missed it in your written slide materials, but what is the current basic facilities charge?
You know, I've been saying so many numbers, I think it's $8.85. And I know it's in one of the slides.
Okay,
85.
so
Yeah.
they've requested an increase to $28.89 per month
Right.
for residential customers.
Yes. It's $8.35, and they've proposed going to $28.89.
Thank you. I was, since you're familiar with how to best weatherize some of these mobile homes or trailers, so to speak, is there much you can do at all if you have weatherization monies? I know some of the co-ops have gone out and put this material on the roofs that reflect the heat, cool seal or something like that. I mean, is that a significant savings if you go out and do that?
Well, I don't know particularly about that film on the roof, but you can add, it's my understanding that you can add some insulation to a mobile home. You can also replace some of those old strip heating systems.
Where would you add the insulation under the floor? Is that because there's not a crawl space in the top?
Well, I haven't done any of these,
Right.
so I don't.
Sure.
So I'm not going to tell you how to go out and
Right.
weatherize your neighbor's mobile home. But I would think that you could put some on the roof with additional roofing material above that. You could put some inside and then, add a new ceiling. More modern mobile homes have better energy efficiency than the old ones.
What nonprofit agencies in the Midlands are currently doing weatherization for low-income people? You said
Yeah, we used to have a Midlands Community Action Agency, and I think it's Watery that handles that. And SC&G does some. The co-ops do some. Some co-ops more, some less.
Have you done a study of, what's the best bang for the buck in terms of trying to address some of these weatherization issues? Have you looked into that?
No, I haven't.
That should be readily available, though, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a world of literature out there on weatherizing low-income homes.
Thank you, sir.
And a lot of it depends on what shape is the house in. When I lived in Fairfield, for a while I lived in a house where you could literally see through the walls, and obviously that was not particularly well weatherized.
Thank you. Commissioner Whitfield.
Thank you. We still have lots of houses like that up there.
Yes, I'm well aware.
Dr. Roof, when I was questioning you a minute ago, I meant to turn back to kind of jog my memory. There is a specific question kind of going down the path that I was questioning you on a minute ago. Could y'all go back to slide 10? Where you say the average rent in the DEC area was $829 per month, and then I guess the percentages I was trying to get at, you got percentage of household income, there in McCormick County, 28.1 to 49.7 in Greenwood County. When you say $829 per month, is that just the rent, or are you throwing out that number $829 as rent and utilities?
That's just the rent. Some of the numbers in the census, in the PUMS data is a little tricky. I would have been delighted to tell you electricity costs, but the way they ask the question is, what was your electricity costs in the previous month? I know when I looked at the history of my bills the other night, I saw that, there's months when we use 400 and change kilowatt hours and months when we use 1,200 and change in kilowatt hours, depending on the weather. So lumping those all together is I think, methodologically problematic, and that's why I have not presented that number to you.
I see. So that 829 is just an average for the entire DEC service territory, and those 28.1 figures and 49.7 figures would take into account whatever the rent is in McCormick or Greenwood County, plus
whatever the utility.
So those figures don't include whatever their utility bill would have been. I mean, the percentages do, but the average rent, you didn't have it broken out. I was trying to find some numbers, but you don't have specific numbers broken out.
It could be broken out by PUMA, and then trying to add them back up. So getting that level of detail is a challenge. You can get more detail if you go to the American Community Survey, if they happen to ask the same question that you did on their table site, which is referenced in the lower set.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Whitfield. Commissioner Williams, you're
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, I just wanted to get a little more clarity on your position regarding basic facility charges. You're not fundamentally opposed to the concept, are you?
No.
Okay.
It should represent the actual cost of providing the service, and AARP has argued in other jurisdictions that it should only include the drop, the meter, and the cost of billing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Others? Okay. Mr. Prothero, Dr. Roof, we appreciate you being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. And yes. Okay. And if not, we are adjourned. I thought somebody else said.